All right, let's dive into these ecology notes you've been working on. Seems like you've been going deep on this one. From what I can see, you've got everything here, from Illinois prairies all the way to the entire biosphere.
And you're right, it is a lot to cover. But that's what makes ecology so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's about seeing the connections, the big picture of life on Earth.
You know what really jumps out at me? Looking at your notes about the different ecosystems right here in Illinois, prairies, forests, wetlands. It's wild to think how they all exist within the same state but have such different vibes.
Yeah, it's like what makes one patch of land a prairie and another a forest, you know?
Exactly. And it's not like they're miles and miles apart either. So what's the secret sauce?
It's all about the ingredients. Think of it like, I don't know, baking a cake. You could use the same flour, but swap out the sugar, the flavor, maybe add some yeast.
Cake. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Totally different results. Each one delicious in its own way, but unique.
Okay, now I'm hungry. But I get your point. So in ecology, those ingredients are the biotic and abiotic factors, like it says in your notes.
Exactly. Biotic factors are all the living things. Plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, the whole gang.
Yeah.
But they can't have their party without the abiotic factors.
Which are?
The non-living stuff.
Okay.
Sunlight, temperature, the type of soil, how much water is around. That's the stage, the backdrop for all the life to happen.
So it's like the abiotic factors set the scene, and then the biotic factors come in and make it amazing.
And that amazing variety isn't just happening on a small scale. You've got notes on biomes here, too.
Right, biomes.
Those massive regions, like think deserts, rainforests, grasslands, and, the Illinois prairies you were talking about, they fit in there, too. They're like the planet's own unique landscapes, all shaped by climate and boasting with different ecosystems.
It's like Earth's got its own variety pack going on.
For sure. And speaking of big picture, you even highlighted this awesome fact about the biosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, that's the zone where life exists on Earth.
Right.
Well, it's really just a thin layer around the planet, 5 miles up into the atmosphere, 7 miles down into the ocean depths. Wild, right?
Kind of makes you feel a little small, doesn't it?
It really puts things in perspective. This thin, fragile layer, that's all we've got.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important to understand how it all works, how the pieces fit together.
Speaking of fitting together, you have habitat versus niche in your notes. I'll admit, those two always trip me up a bit.
They can be tricky, but your notes actually explain it well. Think of it this way. Habitat is like an organism's address where it lives, while niche is its job, what it does there.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So you could have two animals that live in the same forest. That's their habitat.
But they might have totally different roles within that forest, right? Yeah. Like how they find food, how they interact with other species, that's their niche.
So let's say we're back in those Illinois ecosystems. You could have a deer and a woodpecker both hanging out in the same forest, but they have very different jobs to do there.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. No two species can occupy the same niche for long. It's like trying to run the exact same business in the exact same spot as your biggest competitor. Eventually, something's got to give. That's where the competitive exclusion principle comes in.
Competition. So if two species are always fighting for the same resources, one of them might need to adapt, move on, or just disappear.
Survival of the fittest ecology edition. And those adaptations honed over who knows how many generations, that's what makes each species unique, right? And contributes to all that awesome biodiversity we see in the world.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. But all that amazingness, all that life, it needs energy to keep going. Which brings us to the fascinating world of how energy actually flows through ecosystems.
Like some cosmic game of hot potato.
Kind of.
Because I'm seeing food chains, trophic levels. It's a bit intimidating, to be honest. Okay, maybe not intimidating exactly, but I've definitely looked at a food web and thought, how does all that energy actually get passed around?
Well, think of it more like a relay race.
A relay race.
Yeah, with energy being passed from one runner to the next. And those runners, those are the trophic levels you mentioned, the producers, the consumers.
Okay, so like a producer passes the baton to a consumer, got it. But I need a visual. Let's say I'm craving a burger. Walk me through the trophic levels of a burger.
All right, juicy burger, I'm with you. So picture this. It all starts with plants, right? There are producers.
Producers because they're producing the energy.
Exactly. They capture sunlight and through the magic of photosynthesis, turn it into usable energy. They're like the first runners in our relay, grabbing the baton of energy directly from the sun.
Okay, that makes sense. So in the case of my burger, the producer baton was initially held by some very lucky grass.
Precisely. That grass is living its best life, soaking up the sun, and then chomp along comes a cow, our primary consumer, ready to use that stored energy to grow big and strong.
So the cow takes the energy baton from the grass, runs with it for a while, and then I guess I come along craving a burger.
You got it. You're the secondary consumer, benefiting from the energy that initially came from those plants. But here's where things get really interesting. This is where that 10% law you've got in your notes comes into play.
The 10% law.
Yep. With each handoff in our energy relay race, only about 10% of the energy actually makes it to the next runner.
Wait, only 10%? That seems kind of inefficient.
It's not so much about inefficiency, it's more like that's just how energy naturally works in an ecosystem.
So where's the rest of it going?
Well, it's not completely gone. The organism uses most of it, that other 90%, for all the things it needs to do to stay alive. Breathing, moving around, you name it. And some energy has lost its heat, too.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So it's like the energy gets a little used up at each level, which is probably why food chains can't be infinitely long. There just wouldn't be enough energy left at the top.
Now you're getting it. That's why you don't see a chain with like 1,000 different animals all eating each other.
Right. But it also makes those top predators, like a hawk or a wolf, seem even more impressive. They have to work a lot harder to get their energy.
For sure. A top predator might have to eat a ton of prey to get the same amount of energy as an herbivore, munching on plants all day.
It really makes you realize how important every level of that food chain is, especially those producers at the bottom.
Absolutely. They're the foundation, no doubt.
Yeah.
Without producers capturing sunlight and converting it, there's no energy to pass up the chain in the first place.
It all comes back to those plants.
Always.
You know, speaking of top predators, your notes about the Yellowstone wolves come to mind.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a perfect example of how taking even one species out of an ecosystem can have huge ripple effects, right?
The wolves. Yes, a classic case study. When wolves were almost completely wiped out in Yellowstone, it was like pulling a crucial piece out of a puzzle. The whole ecosystem just wasn't the same.
And the elk population went crazy, right? No wolves to keep their numbers in check anymore.
Exactly. With their main predator gone, the elk population just exploded. And all those elk, they needed to eat, so they started overgrazing.
Overgrazing meaning?
They were eating so much that certain plant species started to decline. And when those plants decline, it affects the other animals that rely on them for food, for shelter, you name it. The whole ecosystem felt the impact.
Wow. So it wasn't just about the wolves and the elk. It was this chain reaction that impacted everything in the park.
Exactly. It's a great example of how populations are always in flux, always responding to changes in their environment and to each other.
Like a delicate dance, I guess.
Exactly. Except when humans come along. And, well, let's just say we have a tendency to change the music.
And I'm guessing those changes aren't always for the better, are they? I mean, you've got notes here about pollution, climate change, invasive species, kind of scary stuff.
Yeah. No, sugarcoating it, we humans can be pretty good at messing things up, especially when we don't stop to think about the long-term consequences of our actions. It's like we're just figuring out how to drive this planet, but we've already put the pedal to the metal.
Okay, that's kind of a worrying analogy. So where do we go from here? Is there anything we can actually do to make things better, or is it a lost cause?
Definitely not a lost cause. One of the most important things we can do is be mindful of our own ecological footprint.
Or what's now?
Your ecological footprint. Think of it as like the impact your lifestyle has on the environment. Every little thing we do, what we buy, how we get around, even what we eat, it all sends ripples through those ecosystems we've been talking about.
So you're saying even those small choices, they can add up to something bigger.
Absolutely. Imagine millions, billions of people making those small changes, choosing a bike over a car, cutting back on meat, supporting businesses that are trying to do things right. That's a wave of change that can really make a difference.
Wow, okay. So it's not just about feeling guilty about our impact. It's about using that awareness to make better choices. Like I'm thinking back to those producers we were talking about, the base of the food chain.
Right, the plant.
Exactly. If we support farmers who are using sustainable practices, we're not just choosing a better burger, we're supporting a whole system that's healthier for the planet.
Now you're thinking like an ecologist. And it's not just about individual choices either. We've got to use our voices, advocate for bigger changes, support policies that protect ecosystems, reduce pollution, address climate change. That's where the real power lies.
Because ultimately, we're not separate from nature, are we? We're part of this whole intricate, interconnected web. And what we do affects everything.
Exactly. We need healthy ecosystems for our own survival. Clean air to breathe, fresh water to drink, food to eat. Our future depends on it. It's not just about being tree huggers, it's about protecting our own life support system.
It makes ecology seem a lot more urgent and important than just something we learn about in a textbook.
It's the science of survival.
Well said. Well, we've covered a ton of ground today, from those super cool Illinois ecosystems you've been digging into, all the way to the future of life on Earth. That's what I call a deep dive.
And the best part is, this is really just the beginning. The more we learn about these connections, the better equipped we are to make a difference.
So true. All right, listeners, that's it for us today. Keep those notes handy, stay curious, and keep exploring the incredible world around you. You never know what you might discover. Until next time, keep on diving deep.